Hey friends, what is up and welcome back to my channel and welcome to 2020. Is the first video of the new year and I'm really excited to talk to you guys today about a bunch of books that I am glad that I did not buy in 2019. Now looking back at 2019, I have a few videos coming out later on in the month, some next week, just talking about my overall wrap up for the year, whether it be reading statistics, things that I want to achieve this year, things that happened in 2019, just the usual stuff. But when I was looking back at all of the things that I did or didn't do last year, one of the things that really stuck out to me were a lot of books that a bunch of people were purchasing that I'm glad that I didn't buy for one reason or another. So that is what we're going to be sitting down and talking about today. I think for me, one of my pride and joy achievements for 2019 was not buying into hype on a lot of books. I feel like there were a few that came out, and I'm going to try to keep this list pretty short, but there were a few that came out that I thought about purchasing and either borrowed from the library or just decided not to get at all, and I thought you guys would enjoy hearing that. I also asked on Instagram books that you guys are glad that you didn't purchase, and a lot of these were repeats, so it seems like we're both kind of already there. So I'm going to go ahead and get started and talk to you about all the books that I'm glad that I didn't buy in 2019. So the first book that I want to talk about is a book that I have seen everywhere and I've heard nothing but bad things about. It is definitely a polarizing book. I've heard, like I said, pretty much only bad things about it. Occasionally I will hear a good thing about it, and that would be Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. The reason why I'm glad that I didn't purchase this book is because, like I said, I've only heard bad things about it, and I've heard that maybe it was too long, there was too much shoved into like a smaller book, it could have been expanded upon. I'm actually not even sure really what this book is about, and another reason why I'm glad that I didn't purchase it is because me and Leigh's writing have not been seeing eye to eye. I read King of Scars and was really let down by that. I didn't like Six of Crows or Crooked Kingdom. You guys know I really like the Grisha trilogy, but other than that, I was like, I don't really want to read this new adult book by her, because Sarah J. Maas and Leigh Bardugo are both writing adult series now. And while I am a fan of people kind of branching outside of their comfort zone when it comes to writing, like I said, I haven't heard many good things about this book. And the list of trigger warnings for this book is like 1.5 miles long, and I don't really want to kind of invite that into my life at this point in time. Now, I might borrow from the library and read this down the line because I just have to be in a good mental space to read something like that, but for me, it just seemed like a book that wasn't going to align with what I was in the mood to read and would more so take away from like my mental health than actually add to it and make it an enjoyable experience. The next book I'm glad that I didn't purchase. I was buying into the hype so hard for this book. Now, I have actually read it, but I'm glad that I didn't purchase it initially like I was going to, because at this point in time, I was buying most of the books that I was considering reading, and then later on in 2019, I decided to kind of trim down and focus more on library books, and then I do have Book of the Month, but that's really the extent of it, and this book became available on Book of the Month, and I almost got it, and that would be Daisy Jones and the Six. Now, if you follow me at all on my channel or even online, like on Instagram and stuff, you will know I did not like this book. I think I gave it 3 stars when I initially read it, but I've since then considered giving it 2 stars. I didn't really enjoy this book. Basically, it follows Daisy Jones, and she is more of like a pistol. Like, she is really hard to handle. She's very brash. She does what she wants to do, basically. And that is pretty much the extent of the story for me that I kind of took away from it. I understand that she's struggling as a musician and being seen for her art, but it seemed more like she was just there to cause conflict, and I don't like stories like that. Now, other books by this author I have considered reading and will probably read in the future, but this book itself, I'm glad I did not purchase, because it would be a book that was sitting on my shelves that I wouldn't want. And I have a few books like that from 2019, from the beginning of the year, and I'm glad that I'm not counting this book in that, because it was such a letdown for me. You will probably see this book in my most disappointing reads for 2019 as well. The next book I have to talk about is The Toll by Neal Shusterman, and the reason why this book is actually on this list is because I have heard further down the line the actual like sequels of the book, or like the series overall, was a bit of a letdown. Bunny, who's one of my best friends, she actually read it and didn't really enjoy the most recent one, and that is something that I'm glad that I didn't buy into, because for me, series are my favorite. I really, really enjoy them. They're some of my favorites to read, and to have such a strong first book and then going into the rest of them and then being really big letdowns, I'm glad that I didn't buy into that, because that is the most frustrating experience, I think, as a reader, when a book starts out really strong and then the series ends really poorly. Now, this is a book that I was trying to avoid spoilers for. I just kind of wanted to experience it as I read it, but I didn't get to experience it at all because I never ended up picking it up because I had 100 other books that I wanted to read instead. So for two reasons, I'm glad I didn't get this. One, it probably would have sat on my shelf for a very long time, and two, I have heard that these subsequent releases in the series were actually really bad. So I'm glad that I did end up skipping this one as well. Now this one I'm glad that I didn't buy, but I do actually have a haul coming later this month that does include this book, but it is a library book, and that will be Gwendy's Magic Feather by Stephen King. Now, I read Gwendy's Button Box in 2019, and it is one of the books that I really, really didn't enjoy. Like, I think the newer Stephen King stuff just isn't for me, unfortunately, and I wanted to see kind of what it was about, like what happened. It was the first, I think, combination of books that I read from Stephen King and another author, and I wanted to see if that was something that I could try to get past and enjoy. But for me, the book was really truly a letdown. It was very political. You guys know I've been reading, like, trying to avoid any kind of politics in books recently, and it seems like most of what Stephen King writes has some kind of like political connotation kind of hidden within it, and that is not my favorite kind of book to read. Now, like I said, I did end up getting this from the library to go ahead and see what I thought of it, just to see how the story kind of like ends there, but for me, this is a book I'm glad I didn't buy because I actually did end up getting rid of Gwendy's Button Box. I did sell it to Half Price Books because I just wasn't enjoying it. It's not a book that I would ever reread. It's not a book that I would lend to people, but I do have a little bit of an interest just to see kind of how the story ends. It's a bit of a confusing situation, so I do have the library book to read, but I am glad that I didn't buy it because I know I'm never going to reread the book. And the last book I have on here is a book that is super overhyped, but I haven't really heard much about, but it's like a book that I know if I would have purchased it, it probably would have sat on my shelves for quite a while, and then Gideon the Ninth. Now, this book is incredibly polarizing to people. Either people really, really, really love it or they really, really, really hate it. And I don't like books like that. I would rather people give a book 3 stars and me want to read it even more than it be like, I absolutely love this book, best book of all time, can't wait to reread it, recommend it to everybody, or people who are like, wow, absolutely fucking hate this book, like why did I waste my time on it? I'd rather have a good meet in the middle kind of thing. Like, too bad of reviews or too good of reviews really, really intimidate me. And so this book, like seeing it around, it was either one or the other. And I'm glad I didn't get it. I'm actually trying to get it from my library, but it is very popular. It's definitely a book that a lot of people do want to read. And it's another book that I was trying to avoid spoilers for because I always thought I was going to read it. But for me, it just seems very dense, very like, I believe it's like fantasy based. And for me, it wasn't really something that I thought that I would want to read at the time, and I'm not even sure that it's something that I necessarily want to read right now, but I am aware that the book does exist, and I think that eventually down the line I will read it, but it would have been another incredibly popular book that would have ended up just sitting on my shelves, and that is not something that I want to bring with me into 2020. I want every single book that I own to be a book that I am excited to read. So I'm glad I didn't get this one either, but it is eventually going to be, I think, something that I at least attempt to read. If you've read it, let me know down below where you fall on whether you absolutely love it or absolutely hate it. I'd be interested to know. Alright guys, so those are the books that I'm glad that I did not buy in 2019. Let me know down below a book that you saw everywhere or like a friend read and it was on your radar for a while, but then you eventually were like, I'm really glad I didn't get that. I would love to know. It could be like for reasons of maybe it was problematic or it was just not your cup of tea, or like after all, like everybody was hyping it up, maybe it wasn't as great as everyone said it was. Let me know down below. But thank you guys so much for watching. Welcome to 2020, and I will see you in my next video.